Okay, fine, I'll do a story summary video. I have no idea how people enjoy my retelling of the story. I personally thought that people were going to absolutely clown on it since it was my first time ever even talking about a game story on a YouTube video, but somehow I have no idea how people absolutely loved the way I talked about the story. I don't know what people saw in the way I retold the story. Was it the countless hours rewriting that godforsaken script? Was it the passion in my voice while I was talking about the story? Was it because I didn't say a single bad thing about the story? I don't know. But people asked me to do a story summary video, so I might as well give people what they want, right? Today we're going to talk about 3 episodes. Last time we ended off at episode 3, so today it's episode 4, 5, and 6. So buckle up, because this is about to be longer than your average Golden Bolt video about why Ratchet still hasn't killed Dr. Nefarious. Episode 4 starts right where we left off with episode 3. Alex and Misha are dead, and we've gone back to Rhodes Island for a second to talk about what's next in our plans. And yet again, we get even more Calcit screen time. I have to treat every single second that this character gets screen time like a godsend because I just want to learn more about Calcit. She just interested me that much for no reason. I don't know why I've gotten so connected to Calcit, but Amiya doesn't exactly feel the best when it comes to mental health. Misha and Alex's death is still engraved deep into her heart. Even after all that happened, she still can't forget about the 2 lives that she took away. Amiya goes to her room while Calcit is not happy with the doctor. My guy gets a scolding from the gal for putting Amiya in danger. Apparently those rings that Amiya has on her hands aren't just there for decoration or as an accessory. Those rings actually keep Amiya's oropathy condition at bay, and if those rings ever discolor or crack, let's just say that the doctor isn't going to like what happens to them after Calcit finds out. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that happening anytime soon. Calcit tells us to stick close to Amiya, and she tells us to not mess this up. We get a scene where Amiya just kind of talks with the doctor, which this scene by itself is important. Amiya establishes her own doubts and struggles. She doesn't know whether what path Rhodes Island is trying to take is correct. She understands that some sacrifices are inevitable, but while those doubts are present, she doesn't want to hold everyone back. Amiya's doubt will show up frequently in the story. I mean, I have to remind you that Amiya in the story currently is your average teenager that's a leader of a pharmaceutical company, and she acts mature for a teenager. Amiya has a huge burden on her shoulders. She took 2 human lives after all. You think that a teenager would just kill 2 people and not feel guilty of it? Unless they're a psychopath, then that's a whole nother discussion that I won't get into. This scene gets cut off short with Amiya telling the doctor to give her some time to remain by herself, and the game fast forwards to the next morning because apparently the writers can do that without adding a black screen saying the next day like a few gacha game companies do. Since it's already morning, the doctor meets up with Amiya and Calcit to talk more about the situation at hand. Calcit has an urgent mission for the group where after like 2 whole episodes of barely hearing anything about Chernobog, besides a few mentions by Wei and Chen in episode 2 where the negotiation took place, there was a subsidy of Chernobog that was discovered. After Calcit mentioned this, I just knew that something fucked up is bound to happen. Yet again, the doctor gets scolded a little more by Calcit, somewhat filling you in on what those rings are, but also giving you as little information as possible. Holy shit, this gal can't just stop hiding things from the doctor, huh? Anyway, we don't get much out of the dialogue with Calcit besides that. Amiya has already gone to talk with Franka and Liskarm and also Penguin Logistics. It's kinda like a goodbye for now, and that we're not going to see these characters for a while. The main part of the episode finally begins, and we finally go into that subsidy that Calcit told us to investigate. But for now, we're only going to see the perspective of 2 operators that haven't been introduced thus far. Meteorite, and Frostleaf. Jessica is also here, finally getting sent out on a real mission instead of getting folded by Doberman. And if you didn't already guess, all of the city ruins have been infested with reunion forces that are lurking around every corner. The operators are currently talking with Calcit as well. But stuff is about to get real soon since Frostleaf realizes that the temperature is changing to be much colder than before. Frostleaf tells us of some kind of legend involving the Yeti, which is totally not something that's going to be important later to us. We quickly switch our point of view to Amiya wandering around in the Lungman slums aimlessly. Now, I would not mention this scene if it wasn't important. This scene shows Amiya coming into contact with another infected child. She helps them out in getting a broken record player and gives them some food, but that isn't exactly important. What is important, however, is that Amiya shows self-doubt, questioning whether what she's doing is truly worth it. But this time, guess what? Carmen comes over and starts trying to tell Amiya that what she's doing isn't going to get her anywhere. I am obviously joking with Carmen over here, but some kind of voice tries to tell Amiya that her fighting for the infected isn't going to change anything. Amiya says no to all of the bullshit that she's hearing. She wants to believe that every single infected has a chance, even if they are going to die at some point because of herepathy. Amiya's inner thoughts are conflicted. It's clear that those beliefs that she had before Misha's death are still there, but she knows that the world is filled with inequality. After Amiya finally snaps out of it, we get to see a little girl giving a teddy bear to Chen. How did Chen get here and when? I have absolutely no idea. You don't get much out of this interaction between Amiya and Chen since the scene is cut off short. We later learn, however, that Chen might have said a few things to Amiya off screen. But that isn't exactly all that important what Chen said to Amiya, since Amiya gets a call from Calcit telling her that the situation over at the Chernobog subsidy has turned for the worse. We get a quick perspective change to our three operators again. They are currently hiding somewhere, watching Reunion in their natural habitat, doing mysterious Reunion things. It starts getting a little cold. Jessica starts even biting her fingers to not make a sound out of desperation, and a bit later the Reunion members leave with their operators going to investigate what the hell is going on here. Apparently Reunion is using some kind of Originium chunk that is generating this ice-cold temperature. We get to learn a little more about the legend from earlier, that this very well could be the legendary Yeti Squadron. Unironically, a really cool name for a squad, although, you know what's interesting? Jessica says at the end of this scene that there's a sort of burning smell coming from not so far away. At first, I thought the game might throw in some Tallulah screen time, but that wasn't the case, sadly. I guess if Tallulah did show up, it would have been pretty damn unfair for our operators to deal with that. But enough with the alternative universe bullshit. We get another perspective change back to Amiya talking with the LGD. She explains the current situation and asks the LGD to form a joint operation to eliminate the remaining Reunion forces in Lungman. But Chen says no, with her argument being that, Amiya, you're an infected. Sorry, but you're going to create more problems if you do anything else in the slums. Which, wow, that is just messed up to say something like that to somebody who helped you in multiple operations where your team would most likely end up dead. Amiya gets a phone call while Chen is still trying to argue why the LGD can't make a joint operation with Rhodes Island. This time, it isn't Calcit, but rather Jessica hiding somewhere watching two Reunion leaders, Buddleu and Mephisto. Buddleu, obviously the way she is, starts teasing Mephisto with mentioning somebody who they call the Old Timer. If you paid attention during Tallulah's introduction back in episode 1, this guy did show up briefly. Mephisto gets rage baited by W so easily, goddamn. It isn't that long until Mephisto starts trying to call out Rhodes Island, to which Jessica chose the not so smartest choice to leave their hiding spot and fight them both head on. God damn it, the cat couldn't have sat it out a little longer. Guess who shows up at this part of the game? Yes, Crown Slayer! Woohoo! Bully that bastard! Bully them so goddamn hard! After you beat up Crown Slayer and proving yet again that Shaw is one of the more useful specialist operators in the game, Mephisto starts throwing some kind of powder on his allies and they start healing. Our operators have no idea what the hell is going on and decide to retreat while also shooting down a building to buy themselves some time. The situation is looking much worse already since the Yetis seem to have already attacked a few recon squads. We learned this after seeing Amiya losing contact with multiple recon squads, including the one that Meteorite, Jessica, and Frostleaf are in. This is about to get real fucked up, isn't it? We get some dialogue where Calcit starts questioning when the LGD plans to stop playing dumb, and to nobody's surprise, Chen completely shoves that under the rug and ignores the question completely. Amiya yet again asks the LGD to form a joint operation to eliminate any remaining reunion forces in Lungmen, and this time, somehow, Chen actually agrees to forming a joint operation with Rhodes Island. Talk about changing your mind faster than a certain dumbass on YouTube that makes tower defense videos, huh? Chen even states it isn't that big of a deal that Amiya and the rest of the operators are infected. My god, she just contradicted herself. Holy shit, this girl is stupid. Calcit tells Amiya that her job is to meet up with Meteorite's recon squad since the rescue team cannot reach them, unlike all the other recon squads. Rhodes Island and the LGD arrive at the Chernobog City ruins, and you are not going to guess who shows up. Remember when Jessica said that there's a burning smell somewhere earlier? Yeah, Tallulah's back. Chen starts going absolutely berserk seeing Tallulah's silhouette. She doesn't even answer Hoshiguma's call, so Rhodes Island starts following Chen while the LGD blocks off the main exit. Before we continue, we get some Medic and Calcit screen time where the game basically foreshadows what the Yeti Squadron is truly capable of. Amiya and the rest of the team have already entered the Iridium-dense zones of Chernobog, where Calcit explains to the team that every single recon squad has already been extracted besides Meteorite squad. All of the operators from the extracted squads have been diagnosed with varying degrees of frostbite, and that Amiya should take note of this, while also telling the doctor to actually keep an eye on Amiya. Now, we have a pretty important scene that is going to get touched on later, which is Calcit talking with Project Red about going to the Lungmen slums to deal with the remaining reunion forces over there. This doesn't get mentioned again until episode 6, but it's pretty important either way, so it's worth mentioning for the part of the video where I'll talk about that. Amiya's group meets up again with Chen, who lost track of the silhouette that she was chasing after, but Chen responds that it wasn't Tallulah, and either way, this doesn't seem to be the sort of place that Tallulah would actually be residing in. Chen goes back to the LGD to quote-unquote merge the squad with Rhodes Island if the situation allows for it, and the operation to save the trio continues. Amiya's squad meets up with Frostleaf not long after Chen went back to figure out things with the LGD. Mephisto shows up again trying to call out for Frostleaf like a dumbass, but that doesn't last long since Reunion starts moving out of the area. We learn in this scene as well why all communications have been cut off earlier. It's because the Yeti Squadron froze all communicators of all the recon teams, including Amiya's communicators, so they're basically alone now with no way of calling reinforcements. We follow Frostleaf to meet up with Meteorite and Jessica, who seems to have been traumatized by something. She doesn't respond to anybody, but Amiya has an idea. She tells Frostleaf to put Jessica's arm on her arm, and then some kind of flashback scenes play out, one after another. Dude, this feels like a scene straight out of some kind of Disney movie or something. I have no idea what Amiya did there, whether it was going into Jessica's mind to call out to her or something. After all that settles down, Mephisto returns, does some talk again about how Ursus will pay for how they treated the infected, and some other bullshit trying to justify the genocide of multiple innocent civilians that did nothing wrong, and tells one of the thugs to set a nearby effigy on fire. The doctor decides to cover Amiya's eyes, while everybody is quite frankly terrified and disgusted at the same time. I mean, if I were put in Rhodes Island's place to look at a burning city where the only smell there is burning human flesh and other junk, I would have the same emotions flow through me. I can't even imagine how bad the smell was in Chernobyl. Multiple times in this episode, there's a character that mentions this disgusting smell, and it also just wants to make me vomit even thinking about it. After that fucked up scene happens, Frostleaf starts charging towards Mephisto with Amiya backing her up as well. If only it was that easy to kill a dipshit like Mephisto, huh? That would have probably made the story a little too boring, so we get introduced to a reunion leader that we have already seen briefly after experiencing Ace's final moments. Frostnova seems to be this ruthless reunion leader, but she seems to be sick of Mephisto like literally every single other person in the reunion that has the displeasure of working with the angrychess.com user. She does some kind of talk about giving Rhodes Island a painless death, but let's be honest, there isn't any reunion member that can provide a painless death. Neither are our operators going to surrender so easily. After finishing one of, if not the most annoying boss fights that the game has thrown at you up to this point, Frostleaf uses her own arts to counter against Frostnova's arts, which gives our operators a little more they can do currently. Meteorite even decides to dash towards Frostnova, but unsuccessfully since she gets hit a few times. Amiya has an idea though. Hitting a nearby Iridium chunk with her arts, she gives Meteorite an opening to save the exhausted Frostleaf that used all her power to counter Frostnova's arts. Our operators get away, but oh boy, things are about to get a lot more interesting with another reunion leader showing up, and after getting an emergency call with Chen, G says that Reunion has taken over one of their important facilities. Of course, there's a scene right after that where Mephisto states that W lured in Rhodes Island and the LGD right into Reunion's trap. Episode 5 is no smaller than our previous installment. The stakes are already so much higher than back in episode 1, where our operators got hit with a catastrophe. Lungman is in danger. With the Reunion getting a hold of the LGD's main headquarters, we can figure out that Reunion isn't joking around anymore. They are using a chance that has been given to them. We start off with Chen going through some kind of nightmare. The nightmare that Chen is going through describes the time that Tallulah was taken away by the Duke. Although this nightmare is pretty short-lived since Chen wakes up to see one of her colleagues, Swire, telling Chen to finally get a hold of herself. Chen has absolutely no idea what the hell is going on. All that Swire tells her is that her entire squad was killed in action while the LGD were making a run for it, leaving Amiya and the rest to fend off for themselves. What a bunch of fucking cowards! Swire jokingly says that Chen should step down as the chief officer and let her do the job of being a chief officer, but Chen takes that pretty damn seriously and an argument breaks out between the two while Hoshiguma is just standing there, not doing much besides watching the two go at each other's throats. I mean, Swire, or how she calls herself, Beatrix Schweier, literally tells Chen straight up that she's a piece of shit and that she wants to see Chen bleed. Did I mention the fact that this is the first time a character actually starts swearing? It isn't something like Vivziepop style, where there has to be a swear for every single adjective up there. Swears are used pretty sparingly, but they also are used sometimes to emphasize or accentuate certain things. The swears have a reason to be there besides just, oh hey, look, my character swears every 5 seconds. Look, this piece of media is so mature, like certain adult comedy shows. Anyway, Enough throwing shades at certain pieces of media and also at myself. After Swire leaves, Chen realizes that there's a huge wound on her back. Swire, the absolute Chen that she is, decided to carry Chen on her shoulders to a safe spot. But while doing that, she also got hit by a wall that got destroyed by a reunion caster. You have to give Swire some credit here. He saved Chen's life after all. There's a knock on the door of Chen's cabin. The operator asks if Chen has time to talk about the situation at hand with Rhodes Island. Chen says that she'll be right there, and she returns to the conversation that she had with Hoshiguma. After spilling some bullshit to herself that all those lies that she's spreading towards Rhodes Island and its operators is for Lungman's sake, Hoshiguma tells her that she isn't going to believe her bullshit and that Chen is clearly overworked and she needs a long vacation to recover mentally. This doesn't last long though, since Chen gets a transmission from a secret channel. It's her messenger, Val or XRO2, however you want to call them. They are at Mukwo warehouse. Seriously injured, but the guy seems to have some pretty important intel for the LGD. Chen tells him to try and not to die while the LGD come and rescue him, but the guy seems to be literally at the verge of death. Chen loses contact with the messenger though, and she goes to talk with Rhodes Island and asks them of a small favor to help the LGD with clearing the area near Mukwo warehouse. The operator that Chen is talking to says that Rhodes Island will oblige to help out the LGD since that's written in the contract. Not long after reaching Mukwo warehouse, the LGD scouts the area for a while, where Chen finds that there are traces of construction materials being dragged around. So the only explanation here is that Reunion has set up an ambush point. Hoshiguma suggests that the best strategy here is to have her flush out the Reunion thugs from their ambush point so Chen and the rest of the squad can surround them and end the battle quickly. While Chen is hesitant towards Hoshiguma's idea, even more after she says that she only needs 3 minutes to pull this off, Chen agrees to the plan. Not long after, Hoshiguma flushes out all of the Reunion thugs, with even one of them calling her a demon. I mean, that's a pretty fair comparison. Hoshiguma killed off every single Reunion thug that was stationed in that ambush spot in 2.5 minutes. Chen mentioned something pretty interesting, and that is the fact that Hoshiguma hasn't fought like this for 5 years, which, what was the LGD doing that whole time? Were they treating Wei Yenwu like a god or something and slacking off on the job? I guess you can't really answer that question anyway, so the story moves on to where we meet Chen's informant, which, is apparently somebody that Hoshiguma has known for around 10 years as well. Let's just say that this guy has endured hell on Earth. Val got shot by Arts and is now blind, crippled, and is also bleeding out. Chen wants to save Val, but even I don't see a point in doing that, since even if she somehow did save the guy, he would be nothing more of a rotten vegetable. Somehow, this game makes you care for characters that have less than 5 minutes of screen time. Even if I didn't start crying at this part of the episode like a little baby, this still hit. It definitely hit hard. This hits even harder when Hoshiguma comes in to talk with a friend that she hasn't seen for a while. It's heartbreaking, but not to the point where tears flood out of my eyes like a river. Since that's over, using the intel that Val had gathered, the LGD starts moving towards a location pinpointed by the intel. Apparently, Reunion isn't only in Lungman to build some sort of base of operations, they're also looking for a high-value target. There isn't really a way to tell who this target could even be. All of the rich people from the district that the Reunion is scouting through have been evacuated earlier, but there's a pretty important scene where Chen finds her old estate that she used to live in before going to study abroad in Victoria, and let's just say that her relations with her family weren't exactly the best. It was filled with hatred from both sides. Chen's father hated her and never showed an ounce of love. Now remember when I said that this scene is important? Yeah, Chen remembers that there used to be a photo somewhere in this estate, and that specific photo happens to be... Oh god, Chen and Tallulah are somehow related. Well, that explains something, doesn't it? This is pretty important to keep in mind later, since Chen mentions that she wants to somehow help Tallulah, so I'm sure that will totally have some sort of significance later on. Chen leaves the estate after this, where she meets up with Hoshiguma again, who went into the estate with her but left after realizing that Chen is in her own little world again. Reunion thugs are apparently scattered throughout the entire area, but the LGD forces that were stationed nearby are driving them out. We quickly switch our perspective to a reunion squad that seems to be confused. Why is Lungmen so empty? Why has everything that's valuable been taken away? And why are there no citizens in sight? There's also been signs of a few reunion teams seemingly going missing and not responding to anybody, but the LGD shows up behind a window and a fight ensues. Apparently Swire's parents have some attachment to this place, and Swire tells Chen to try and be careful, but that isn't going to exactly work since the casters destroy a piano that the LGD officers were using as a cover. Man, what a bunch of dumbasses. Much else doesn't happen after the fighting ends, besides the fact that Hoshiguma questions whether infected people like Amiya will be able to go out shopping and eat their favorite food while talking with Chen. One of the LGD guards starts shouting to run since there are explosives on the 3rd floor, conveniently right underneath Chen and Hoshiguma. Chen passes out for the 3rd time, but only for a dozen seconds or so. She wakes up to Hoshiguma holding 2 giant pieces of debris right above her. Chen tells the inspector to let her slash the debris, but Hoshiguma doesn't seem to want to agree with that idea. She just decides to give the debris a push and moves it away from them both. Hoshiguma is injured. Those reunion thugs that were there earlier are still alive and still want the LGD dead. So as compensation for Hoshiguma saving Chen so many times with her shield, my girl just starts aura farming like your average anime protagonist and goes on to fight the reunion thugs by herself. I mean, Chen literally tells Hoshiguma to shut the fuck up after being asked if she isn't going to blush after giving that sort of speech to her, which I thought was really cool. After another fight's work, Chen decides to leave Hoshiguma and move to the headquarters by herself. Swire calls Chen again to ask her why she rejected Rhodes Island's help, but Chen just changes the topic to talking about some kind of restaurant that Swire loved to go back when she was still on patrols. The two just kind of change between subjects. There isn't all that much you can get out of this interaction between the two, but Swire just tells the same thing as Hoshiguma did a minute ago, that Chen shouldn't waste her life on nothing and that safety is always first. Chen and her subordinates head over to the LGD headquarters, but before that she gives your average motivational speech. It isn't anything worth mentioning, but might as well, right? Somehow the LGD gets into the headquarters pretty easily. There's no reunion in sight, which is weird to say the least, since a guard mentions that there were a lot more reunion thugs stationed out of the LGD headquarters defending its entrance. After a bunch of ghost stories told by a guard that will totally not be important later, Chen decides to use the fire escape route since it's the best shot that they have to reach the rooftop. After reaching the said rooftop, Chen meets up with none other than Mephisto, which with just a simple good evening starts sending enemies at Chen's throat, which she deals with easily. Mephisto isn't done yet though, since he does the exact same thing as he did to Neural and tells Foss to deal with the job, which the sniper misses the shot on purpose as a warning to Chen. Of course, the rest of the LGD is still there, but they're currently fighting for their lives while Chen and the two commanders are practically at each other's throats. Mephisto does some Unga Bunga necromancy magic and spawns in a bunch of his guards and throws some kind of powder on them. The resurrected enemies, as well as Mephisto's guards, have been absolved of any emotions. They're just empty husks made to kill. The situation is pretty bad currently, where the LGD is basically surrounded with barely any way to fend off themselves besides close quarter combat. Mephisto realizes that Chen has never used her other blade, but after asking her, Chen just responds that this blade isn't worthy of ending a pitiful life as Mephisto's. We learn from a quick flashback that this sword was given to Chen by none other than Wei Yanwu. It's supposed to be a sword that's capable of slaying dragons and shouldn't be used on enemies that are undeserving of witnessing its power. The chess.com sweat pulls out the "Catch Me If You Can" card, where telling Chen that he can try to kill him and that he only wants to fight worthwhile foes and die a worthwhile death. After Chen rage baits Mephisto a little more, telling him that Chernobog is only the foundation of his confidence, and that Lungmen won't fall into Reunion's hands, which Mephisto eats up and tells Foss to yet again shoot Chen, which he does, but to everybody's surprise, Chen decides to lock the fuck in and block every single bullet like a Dark Souls player would. Are we sure that Yan is based on Hong Kong and not the great land of the Brits? I mean, come on. There ain't no shot that Chen, a Lungmanite, is this good at using a shiv, right? Like, good golly gosh, this girl is literally a British person. Tell me otherwise. With the sarcasm aside, Chen nearly kills Mephisto with those arts that detonated Frost's bullet. After a bunch more shots and Mephisto starting to get a little mad since he chose the wrong opponent, Chen tries to unsheath the sword a second time, but ultimately fails and Faust tries to shoot her. But Chen yet again blocks all 3 bullets. My girl broke 2 ribs just by trying to forcefully unsheath that sword. Faust wanted to shoot her while she was trying to unsheath the sword, but Mephisto wanted to see her spirit die down. Dumbass literally let her live because he wanted to see Chen in despair. The entire time, Mephisto tries to gaslight Chen into thinking that reunion is working for the greater good, but Chen isn't going to buy any of that bullshit. I mean, Chen literally just wants to sacrifice herself when everybody told her earlier to not do something so reckless. But she isn't going to have to do that since, what would this episode be without some Amiya screen time? Yep! Remember when Swire told Chen that she has a surprise for her on that call earlier where they talked about that one burger restaurant? Yeah, this is that surprise. Rhodes Island jumping out of a helicopter James Bond style, of course this time with a new face around. Enter Blaze. I mean, the second she drops down, she cuts down a building to block out the rest of Reunion's forces and stuff. That's how powerful she is. Apparently, she can only do this every few months, so I can only guess how much energy it takes to do such a thing. I guess that Mephisto gets a little mad, but after all the action that happens, it's just your average banter before a fight. The current mission is to help create an opening for Chen to end Mephisto's life and reclaim the LGD headquarters. After one of the more interesting and exploitable boss fights come to an end, Faust and Mephisto's squad is basically done for. All their tricks have been revealed, so the only sensible thing to do is run away, but Chen and Blaze aren't going to let either of them escape. Mephisto sends a few guards to buy themselves some time, but finally, after 2 failed attempts to unsheath Cheek Shao, Chen finally unsheathes the sword and ends the suffering of 2 of Mephisto's guards that even thank her. Wow, those guys were miserable. Mephisto and Faust escape. Faust is severely injured. Mephisto is in utter disbelief and tries to find reasoning to why their plan failed. He literally wants to wait for Rhodes Island and the LGD to come after them so he can deal with them. Dumbass is literally trying to commit suicide at this point, and he isn't even trying to hide it. But Faust tells him to jump and leave this place. All that matters now is that the LGD headquarters have been taken back from Reunion. Chen gets a call Wei Wei Yanwu on a private channel, where he congratulates both Swire and Chen for finishing one of the last phases of the operation flawlessly. This guy literally set up Rhodes Island to be bait for Reunion. That's how fucked up this guy is in the head. I can't even make myself like this character. Even after the later chapters, there's no other feeling than just hatred towards Wei. I have no sort of way to describe this since you actually need to read through the story yourself and make your own opinion here. You can't just make your opinion off my garbage summarization of the game's story, since there's so many things that I leave out, you know? The main plan that Wei currently has is waiting for Reunion's counterattack and finishing off the Reunion's forces that are scattered around Lungmen. The current situation is seemingly going all according to Wei's plan, but after a quick perspective change, we see Wei and his wife, Fumizuki, talking about a bunch of stuff, including the fact that there's still no response from Ursus, and their messenger still didn't get to speak with Prime Minister White. The final episode that I want to talk about today is going to be episode 6, and it has to be the best episode out of the 3 that I'm going to be talking about today, since it concludes the Frost Nova arc of Act 1 and also starts the fall of the Reunion arc, as I like to call chapters 7 and 8. The episode starts off with some kind of published article from 937, This article mentions that the suffering of the people infected by neuropathy dates to even before the emergence of law. But the story changes scenery to Frostnova and the Doctor seemingly about to get into a fight, where Frostnova states that she will join Rhodes Island, where she will fight together side by side. The first time when I read this, I missed the first 2 lines of dialogue and misinterpreted this whole scene as Frostnova joining Rhodes Island to end Reunion for good. So I kind of fooled myself into thinking that this entire plotline is different than what it actually was. This scene will get brung up later in the story again, so the game takes us back to the present, where the game basically recaps to you what the final phase of Way's plan is. We get to see how Mephisto and Faust are doing currently. Mephisto absolutely lost his shit, while Faust and the rest are still trying to retreat. Even the Phantom Crossbowman trusts Faust more than Mephisto. Yet again, another perspective change to Rhodes Island and their side of things, where Blaze is patrolling around the LGD headquarters, just looking for any Reunion members passing by. He does find a bunch of Reunion members actually trying to clear a road to group up with another brigade. Blaze's way of fighting is much more different from the operators so far. Instead of just killing the Reunion thugs, he makes them unable to wield a weapon. This is going to become a much more common trope between every few operators that we will encounter in the story, especially elite operators. Blaze also nearly gets into crossfire with the LGD officers that are stationed nearby, but she quickly explains to them that she is from Rhodes Island and tells the LGD officers to go to the next roadblock, while Blaze starts using her arts to heat herself up or something and drops probably one of the craziest lines, where she says, "Let's take a Sammy bath together. My treat." Like, what the fuck, dude? The first time I read that, I actually spit out my water and questioned whether I read that correctly. That sounds something like a Zenless Zone Zero character would say, not an Arknights character. That line genuinely caught me so off guard, it's kind of weird why it did that in the first place. Blaze just kind of starts scaring the Reunion thugs after not breaking a sweat dealing with them. She lets the stragglers go, and the Doctor comes back with Amia and another operator, Greythroat. Blaze and Greythroat seem to have this weird relation with each other. Apparently Greythroat said something about the infected and Blaze heard that, and now they're somewhat enemies, I guess? They work in the same faction after all, but Blaze seemingly does not like working with Greythroat, which is apparently uninfected. Amia explains to us more on the plan. This is like the 3rd time they explain what the hell Way's plan is, but whatever, you can't really have enough explaining when Arknights players don't know how to read, you know? Amia wants to leave the Doctor to go with Blaze, and specifically wants the Doctor to look after Blaze's mental health, since it may impact her performance. I mean, Blaze is the type of operator that does not want to fight infected people, while Rhodes Island is literally at war with Reunion, so she needs some kind of psychological comfort, you know? Quick perspective change to the LGD, where Swire and Chen are working together? I thought that they hated each other based on the interactions they had in episode 5. Okay, sure, I'm not complaining, but they're just dealing with Reunion teams that haven't joined up with the main force, where while that's going on, Wei seems to be on the phone with somebody. You can't get much out of this conversation since it's only Wei and Wu's side. If it wasn't already clear enough that Tallulah has something to do with Chen, the flashback scene that plays out after Wei's phone call basically confirms everything. Wei and Wu, and I'm going to assume Fumizuki, gave birth to Tallulah. Wonder how the game will use this plot later on, huh? Quick perspective change to the Rhodes Island landship, where we meet yet another operator, which is Rosamontes. He doesn't get much screen time for now. The only really important thing that you can learn from this scene is what Greythroat said that made Blaze so mad when we first got introduced to her. She asked an infected person straight into the face how it feels to be infected. That somehow pissed Blaze off. I mean, that very much could have been a genuine question that Greythroat had, since she isn't infected with Erypathy, and Blaze might have just misinterpreted it as an insult to the struggle of the infected, which she outright states that she won't let some uninfected girl disgrace the struggle of the infected. This is a flashback that goes back to before the operation to save the Doctor even began, which is kind of interesting that they still bring this up even after the Doctor was saved. But after all, this flashback plays out from Blaze's perspective, so it's even more clear that she's starting to have second doubts when it comes to Ace's decision to train Greythroat. Those thoughts come to a quick end when the Doctor comes around. The two go on a little banter. Blaze apprehends a few dozen reunion members and realizes that Mephisto's herds are going around killing even their own teammates. It's a clear sign that something is going on. Mephisto has lost control of his own herds, and after a quick perspective change back to Chen and Swire, Chen seems to be thinking about somebody. It isn't explicitly stated who exactly is it, if it's either Tallulah or possibly somebody else. Swire literally says that there's no reason for the person they're talking about to betray the LGD, so Tallulah is not the one they're talking about clearly. There's actually a scene right after this where Mephisto does more of his necromancy shenanigans and his herds kill a bunch of other reunion thugs. Faust doesn't like this though and leaves Mephisto to rescue the other reunion members. After saving a bunch of them, Faust meets Greythroat and calls her out for being naive and warns her the next time they meet, it won't end in just small talk but Greythroat ending up dead. Quick perspective change to the LGD, which are struggling to deal with Mephisto's herds. The LGD get approached by some weird person in red robes, which for some reason also has one of the most hilarious sprites, which I might as well call Wide Chungus while I'm at it. Apparently the person in the red robe is called Madame Censor, who also wields lightning arts. This is also where the black raincoats get introduced. They aren't really anything interesting right now. They're going to get more screen time later on where the story explains exactly who has these raincoats under their command and why they are killing every single reunion member they see. Wait a fucking minute. Didn't I see that back in episode 0? Isn't this literally what Reunion has been doing for a while? The next important scene that shows up right after this is a Reunion member talking to some kind of woman. Currently, her identity is very much remained in mystery and not much can be figured out just based on what this scene alone shows to the player. The Reunion member proposes to the woman to leave Lungmen to go anywhere else but Lungmen. Amiya with her squad is still in touch with Greythroat, Blaze, and the Doctor and are trying to currently regroup while Chen has finished mopping up the remaining reunion stragglers somewhere near the slums. Apparently there's also been a reduction in reunion mutant numbers, but while Chen is talking on the radio, one of those black raincoat bastards show up again. Oh, never mind, it's just an LGD officer reporting in, explaining that they swept the area and haven't found any reunion footprints, but there's also some unusual stuff happening in the slums. All of the buildings have been abandoned. There's been traces of forced entry, but reunion is nowhere to be seen. Jen decides to take the LGD guard and flush out that black raincoat that she saw earlier. This whole interaction between the two is just the person in the black raincoat avoiding the questions that Chen asks and just tells Chen to try and not interfere with their carefully laid plans. To make this somewhat worse, apparently these black raincoat bastards are affiliated with Wei Yenwu, but the black raincoat that Chen is talking with just kind of leaves while Swire just came back having no idea what just happened. But Chen explains that the Lungmen Special Forces are on the move. Oh, wait a minute, that's what those raincoats are for. Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. This is the part of the story where I really started to get confused. Like, seriously fucking confused. Who the hell is Swire's grandfather? Why does Lungman have an entirely different force consisting of people in black raincoats? Why are there some random people in red robes that get called masters by the LGD officers? I have so many questions, and these don't really get explained in the story, at least I don't think they do. But questions aside, and going back to the recap, Swire mentions some kind of girl called Lynn Gray. Swire thinks that Lynn runs the slums, not her grandfather. While this is going on, Crownslayer is talking with a few of his comrades, which apparently one of them saw shadows of two women. Now I get to remind you, if you have been listening this entire time, that earlier Keltsit mentions that she will go with Project Red into the Lungman slums to deal with the remaining reunion forces. So we finally get to see that actually happening. Before that happens, there's also a call between Swire and Lynn Gray. Apparently those special forces that Chen mentioned earlier were the Rat Ladies doing. The whole deal with the special forces is just to eradicate any reunion forces, at least in the slums. The call between the two ends on an abrupt note, where Lynn tells Swire to not investigate the sewers. And the game switches to Mephisto's perspective, where he learns from one of the Phantom Crossbowmen that his herds aren't growing in numbers. Apparently the ones who suppressed the herds were the Black Raincoats. Faust apparently got a lot of Mephisto's guys earlier and tells the rest to fight off the LGD. After that, there's also Mephisto's and Faust's backstory, which to say the least is pretty goddamn tragic. Mephisto apparently comes out of an abusive household where there was no love ever given to anyone. His real name is Eno, while Faust is named Sasha. Faust apparently fed Mephisto while also helping him out with bullies in school. This is one of the two parts that actually hit harder for me than the ending of episode 6. The reason why Faust doesn't talk as much is because that he knows that his words influence Mephisto. He knows that if he dares saying anything, Mephisto will take it literally. It doesn't matter if it's just telling Mephisto to keep laughing, or anything else that gets brought up in this singular scene. He would do whatever Faust told him to do. I don't exactly pity Mephisto, but I can see why this guy is such a sociopath. Mephisto has been rid of any sort of emotions in his childhood. He literally told a bunch of infected kids to kill his parents. One of the more important quotes are actually mentioned in this flashback, which is, "We'll go together, we'll survive." Now, you may ask, why do I deem this so bloody important? Well, this is the main quote that motivates Mephisto and Faust to move forward. In Faust, I don't know how, but somehow a kid gobbled up an entire rock. Yes, you heard that right. Faust gobbled up an entire chunk of Originium. This is also the flashback scene where it is explained how Mephisto and Faust joined the reunion. It's not much besides the fact that Eno and Sasha pick a new alias to go by. There's also the fact that after some kind of incident, Faust mentions that Tallulah changed completely. Her ideals changed. I have no idea why this backstory hit. It isn't something that I can say that made me cry, but it was definitely close to that. I somewhat sympathize with Faust in the singular flashback fleshed out Mephisto as a character. It somewhat explains why Mephisto is the way he is. Now, right after this flashback scene is the part that made me cry. I could not hold my tears after what happened next, since Rhodes Island is going to fight against Faust. Before that happens though, Amiya tells Blaze to get her butt over here, otherwise she will hand over all of last year's disciplinary reports to Dr. Keltsit, and if I could figure out anything about Dr. Keltsit from the limited screen time that she has had up until this point, oh boy, Blaze would have to stand for long hours listening to Dr. Keltsit's scoldings. And not those sort of light scoldings that the Doctor had to go through in episode 4. I mean scoldings that would be triple the length of episode 7's word count. But Blaze realizes that Mephisto and Faust are moving to one of the ambush points and alerts that she is going to take the Doctor into battle. Ben and Swire are currently discussing a plan to intercept Lungman's special forces. Shen wants to let one reunion group go and then track them into the slums, which Swire isn't exactly the most decisive about, since she thinks that it's a huge gamble to the LGD and that they should just leave that to the Black Raincoats, since that isn't what they've been assigned to do. But Shen doesn't really want to listen to any other plan. Shen contacts Amiya, who tells her that everybody is in position. Amiya yet again mentions Misha's death, but this time in the context of her own ideals and how she still cannot condone Officer Chen's opinions on the infected. I mean, Swire compliments Amiya for her heartfelt speech, but Chen quickly disposes of that and the real fight begins. Faust and the rest of his team was pushed further into the slums by the LGD, and Faust, as a last resort, decides to use his arts to make the Phantom Crossbowman invisible while also rupturing his organs in the process. And I just have to say it, holy shit, after I did this level, it was yet again around like 1 AM in the morning. I had school the next day, but I literally just put my phone down and started crying. I had some sort of interest towards Faust, and when he just decides to sacrifice himself, I can't take that with a straight face and say, oh yeah, that happened. Damn. I guess the story moves on now. This is another one of those parts of the story where you really start to question, is Rhodes Island really the good guy in the story? Or are they just as bad as Reunion and literally every single other faction that we have encountered up until this point? This death doesn't really seem to affect Amiya as much as Misha did, but it still gives her that sort of thought, whether everything they're doing will actually do anything. Dude, even Greythroat starts to question Rhodes Island after seeing so many dead bodies under her feet. Amiya tries to explain it, with the argument being that she asks herself the same question every single day. Rhodes Island sees people dying on a daily basis, infected or not. Rhodes Island's goal is to tear up the soil that nurtures the hate against the infected. Reunion actually fires a bunch of Originium-boosted crossbow bolts to commemorate Faust, and we switch perspectives over to Greythroat and one of the people in red robes talking with each other. The person in red robes tells Greythroat that it's dangerous to make friends with the infected, but Greythroat doesn't really care who she makes friends with. Amiya gets a call from none other than Gavial. Holy shit, this is the second time they mention Gavial in this entire episode. But she explains to Amiya that she entered a passage under the slums and saw the Black Raincoats and Yeti Squad. Now to tell you, Faust's death was only the first part of this episode. The second part of this episode focuses solely on Frostnova and her squad. I'm not usually the type of person to discuss gameplay when I'm talking about story in any sort of game, but come on. I'm not making a whole different video just to talk about each chapter's gameplay. No matter how many views I would get, I would not do that. This episode introduces the infamous frozen mechanic. Oh my god, I cannot put it into words how much I absolutely despise this mechanic. When playing through the Limbus Company collaboration with Arknights, this mechanic was also present, somewhat in the same way as it is in Arknights, but you are able to just nullify the effect by stalling out the fight with either defense sinners or evade sinners for that matter. Here, it isn't exactly possible without one singular archetype of the medic class, which I will not get into, or Lapland, for those who are willing to classify her as a solution to the problem. But just to say the least, if you nullify this mechanic by using that single archetype of medic and Lapland, the difficulty really goes from hard intense to baby mode until the final boss, which even that probably makes the fight much easier. But back to the recap. The game rewinds time before Blaze showed up to save Amiya and the rest of her squad. Blaze actually calls Amiya through a special elite operator channel, which, let's just say that Frostleaf, after hearing Blaze's voice, isn't exactly the happiest to learn that she will have to cooperate with her. Blaze jumps down again, just like she did in episode 5, or farming in the process. After a quick fight, Rhodes Island decides to retreat, but Frostnova says no and starts using her arts to change the structure of the lower levels, tilting the plates. Something that I have to remind you is that Frostnova is currently severely injured and still is trying to make Rhodes Island unable to escape. The ground under the Doctor's feet starts splitting in half, which causes the Doctor to do an Undertale reference and falls down. But before that happens, the fall was somewhat made less painful by Blaze's heat flow that will slow down the Doctor's fall. I expected everything but an Undertale reference from this game, whether this was intentional or not. The thing is, apparently Frost Nova is also down there. Both the Yeti Squadron and Rhodes Island decide to form a temporary truce to dig out both the Doctor and Frost Nova. While both teams are digging out two people from underground, there's a quick perspective change to Chen and the LGD in the slums. Chen gets a call from somebody called Only One that tells her that they are leaving Lungmin to Chen. They are also taking some of Lungmin's infected since the LGD is incapable of helping them. We learn that Only One is called 9, which I'm going to assume that this is the same person that was proposed to leave Lungmin by one of the reunion members. The call between Chen and 9 ends yet again at an abrupt note, just like Lin's and Swire's call did. 9 tells Chen to not investigate the sewers, which I'm sure she will not do based on her character. After 9 hangs up, Wire mentions that she wants to call that rat girl again, while also mentioning something about Lin's father, which is also called the Rat King. Chen's idea is to get the rat lady to steer the Raincoats into meeting the main reunion force, while also having Rhodes Island there since Chen has so much trust in them. There's also a scene with Lin getting a call and Chen telling Amiya that there's currently a situation going on, but neither of those scenes are really important to touch on. The Yeti Squadron is currently fighting off the collective offensive of both the Raincoats and the LGD. One of the members actually finds a mother and a daughter in the slums. Frost Nova also comforts the crying child, making them smile instead, so that's kinda wholesome. Frost Nova tells one of the Yetis to escort the two out of the slums somewhere safe. Greythroat also finds some kid in the slums, but some reunion thugs ambush her. Blaze shows up, dealing with the reunion guys, and also hiding the kids in the process. Blaze apologizes to Greythroat for getting her all wrong. Blaze misunderstood Greythroat, taking her as a heartless, uninfected girl that was spying on Rhodes Island for whatever reason. But Greythroat responds that if she is a spy, then this is exactly how she would gain Blaze's trust. While that's happening, Amiya is talking with the Doctor a bit further away from the two. Amiya tells the Doctor that if they want to gain Blaze's support, they will first need to gain Blaze's trust. Rhodes Island operators act in a sense of duty instead of trust. Blaze has somewhat of an interesting personality. She's a conversationalist, but at the same time, she isn't the best at expressing her own feelings. The interaction between both Greythroat and Blaze is more than just an apology. It's Blaze confronting her own prejudices against the infected. It's a double-edged sword where the uninfected have their own prejudices against the infected and vice versa. Although, while Amiya and the Doctor are talking, more reunion thugs show up, so they both decide to give some room for both Greythroat and Blaze to talk and stuff. And now it's finally time for one of my favorite scenes of the entire episode. Earlier, I mentioned that one of the reunion members from Crownslayer's squad saw two shadows somewhere in the slums. We are going back to that now. Keltsit and Project Red catch Crownslayer. This interaction overall is interesting enough due to the fact that there's finally some insight on Crownslayer's character. The reunion leader accuses Keltsit of being some kind of traitor that sold out Ilya, Crownslayer's father. Keltsit doesn't even flinch though. She stands unaffected by the accusations that are being thrown at her. Apparently, Crownslayer killed her own father with the help of Alex, or Skullshatterer for those who don't remember that name. Keltsit tells Project Red to let Crownslayer move, and when the reunion leader asks why she did that, Keltsit just responds that this is Crownslayer's chance to kill the so-called traitor right in front of her. Instead of going straight for the chance that was given to the reunion leader, Crownslayer decides to instead start yapping for 5 minutes about how much she hates Keltsit. But, nope. A big monster appears from Keltsit's spine, which seems to have some sort of personality of its own. Keltsit didn't summon this monster of hers to kill Crownslayer, rather save her from the building that's about to collapse. Ilya was Dr. Keltsit's student, one of the best ones she had. His selflessness and dedication could have pushed Ursus 5 years into the future. Lyudmila asks why Keltsit never saved her father, but she only explains that she couldn't. She couldn't convince Crownslayer's father to leave the Institute. Keltsit even compares Crownslayer to Ilya multiple times during this interaction. She also mentions that she sent Crownslayer to Siracusa, but Lyudmila decided to go back to Chernobog for whatever reason. There's not much else that comes out of this interaction. Keltsit just lets Crownslayer leave after throwing an entire fucking lore dump on the girl. This is the first time the story actually shows Keltsit and the way she talks. She's clearly experienced and wants to educate the people who've done wrong and want to tread a different path. That's one of the only reasons why Crownslayer doesn't die here, is because Keltsit sees that Crownslayer can change, and she gives her that chance. Reunion's current situation isn't as bright, however. The Yeti squad seem to have reached out to most Reunion squads to pull out. Even one of the Yeti squad members starts getting sentimental, comparing the amount of Reunion members pulling out to a river in the wilderness. Man, surprisingly, even the Reunion members have interesting personalities. This isn't the first time that Reunion members that aren't Reunion leaders have some sort of personality to show for themselves. Both the Yeti Squadron and the Phantom Crossbowmen meet up, where the Yetis tell the other team that Frostnova is growing weaker by the minute. Frostnova exhausted her energy pushing back Lungman's forces, and now she's asleep. The Yetis propose that the Crossbowmen take Frostnova to Chernobog. The Crossbowmen seem to be hesitant, but ultimately agree to transport Frostnova to Chernobog with Mephisto. This scene alone really just shows that certain Reunion leaders really built trust with their teams. Frostnova's team, and later on Patriot's team, will really support this point later on. Yeah, okay, some Reunion leaders such as Tallulah and Mephisto are sociopaths, but that doesn't mean that every single member in the Reunion is a cold-blooded sociopath that wants to kill for sport. I mean, the Yetis literally cry in this scene. That's how much attachment they have to their sister. Not much more happens here besides the mention of Frostnova helping the Yetis in some sort of mine. This is about to be really important for one of the scenes that I will talk about shortly, so keep this in mind. The perspective switches to Rhodes Island and the LGD luring the Black Raincoats into meeting with the Yetis. The scene that plays right after this is actually the first time the game ever mentions anything about Amiya's age. Petrovo, one of the Yeti squad members, says that Amiya looks to be 14 while talking about people who can hold their liquor. Yes, I'm not kidding, there's actually a scene like this in the game, and I fucking love it. There's also a quick perspective change to 9, which just mentions that she's moving towards a new Reunion base somewhere that isn't Chernobog. Now, it's probably one of the more important parts of Episode 6, which is going to be Frostnova's backstory. This backstory by itself is probably even more tragic than Mephisto's and Faust's backstory. Her parents died protecting her, and her father is now Buldrakasti, or how I'm going to call the guy, Patriot. Frostnova was born in a mine somewhere in the northwest tundra. This by itself is already fucked up enough, since the mine was only built to spread death and slavery. Her parents were sentenced to mine labor because both of them opposed the Emperor of Ursus's wartime plans. Frostnova's grandmother, who was there in the early years, when the little bunny was still learning to speak, was also sentenced to mine labor as a harborer of criminals. The most fucked up thing in this entire backstory is that the Ursus military drew straws to decide the fates of Aripathy sufferers. The way that Ursus treats the infected reminds me a lot of some really fucked up real-world incidents. If you know what I'm talking about, good. I can't even talk about it on YouTube. But back to Frostnova's backstory. With the new policies that the Emperor has put into force, the mines were left of starved children only since all the adults died. Under the Emperor's orders, the overseers were tasked with executing the last of the infected in the mines, which afterwards, they would collapse the mines, leaving them as a mass grave for the infected. When the execution started, Frostnova's arts erupted from within her body, killing 4 of the executioners. She wasn't able to turn the tables around. Kids with barely any defense were no match for the overseers that carried sharp weapons and also solid armor. When the final wave of executioners arrived, a guerrilla band arrived. That was Patriot's team. They killed every last executioner, and the children that were alive escaped the mines. There's actually a somewhat wholesome scene where Frostnova asks the doctor to take out a piece of candy for her and also themselves. That's apparently a joke of hers that she hasn't been able to make anyone fall for in a while. So the doctor's reaction really put a smile on her face. Frostnova's arts are really interesting. They make it so that she's even colder than winter itself. A singular touch of her skin can cause severe frostbite. That candy that she just teased the doctor with is the only way that she can feel warmth without hurting her inner organs. The fact that Patriot did not even care about his unarmored arms getting frozen while carrying Frostnova is some dedication. I guess you can't really expect anything else from the GOAT Patriot. He was literally a killing machine back at the time when he was working for the Ursus military. He contracted oropathy during his final battle when he was in Ursus military, which he hid the disease from his own son. Which his son was also participating in the Great Rebellion, campaigning for the rights of the infected, seeing his own father as an Ursus puppet. Patriot also saw his son during the campaign. By then, the son's body had frozen. Frostnova and the other kids were lucky enough that Patriot's team got there in time, since the other 4 groups of kids that were in the camps were found buried in the collapsed mines. It's kind of interesting that Frostnova describes the doctor as the one who brings death. The person that everybody fears, infected or not. There's not much else in this scene besides when the doctor asks if Frostnova wanted to ever coexist with normal people. But Frostnova responds like every single other reunion member, throwing out of the window every single other living being besides Ursus citizens. But she speaks somewhat differently than the other reunion members up to this point. Frostnova understands that the hatred to the infected is not the fault of normal citizens. Rather, the Empire of Ursus and its way of spreading its propaganda of hatred against the infected. God fucking damn it, at least one singular person in the reunion understands that the Empire is the problem and not the citizens. This is also one of the few reunion leaders that understands that Tallulah changed. She is no longer the same person, although unlike other reunion leaders, she does not agree with what Tallulah is doing. Frostnova has her own thought process instead of blindly praising what Tallulah is doing. The only other reunion leader that really shows this up to episode 6 is Faust. Tallulah has big plans for this time around. She wants to make Lungmen one of the bases of reunion. This is much bigger than the Chernobog incident. At the end of the scene where the doctor talks with Frostnova, she makes a bet with us. If the Rhodes Island squad will dig out both the doctor and Frostnova first, she will kill all of the doctor's squad, and if Frostnova's squad will dig them both out first, the doctor dies. It doesn't matter who digs them out first, Rhodes Island would still die either way. But for now, we're going to have to wait to see who digs out both the Doctor and Frostnova out of the debris, since we get a perspective change to 9 who makes a flower as a token of respect to the Yetis, and there's also Madame Censor with the other red robe guys. Yes, White Chungus is also here. Blaze runs over towards one of the red robe guys, but they defend themselves with, wires? Okay, interesting weapon choice, alright. The Red Robes guy tries to investigate if Blaze is with Reunion, but Chen also comes along, telling the Red Robe guy that they do not have the authority to investigate her partner. The Red Robes leave, with one of them even mentioning something about Blaze inheriting much from her dad. Blaze is very shocked by this, trying to pursue the guy that mentioned that, but is stopped by Amiya, reminding her of the mission. Chen also leaves, with her mentioning that there's one more thing that she wants to see. Chen is probably going to visit the sewers, but that isn't all that important currently. On the other hand, the Doctor meets up with Dr. Keltsit, which you don't get much out of this interaction, besides basically confirming that the Doctor is going to need to confront Frostnova. Keltsit also tells the Doctor that she doesn't need to put her trust into them after working with the Doctor for so long. Keltsit seems to retract what she said, excusing it as something that she shouldn't have said. Okay, what the fuck is this girl hiding, and why can't she just accept the Doctor the way they are now? I understand being cautious, but I still really don't understand Keltsit's character as a whole. The Doctor's and overall Rhodes Island's past will be revealed in the Arc side stories, which, yes, I will make a video on, but that isn't important right now. There's also a scene with Frost Nova and the Phantom Crossbowmen. She tells the Crossbowmen that she has a few infected friends that she wants to meet up with again, that she also promised to meet with them again. Where after that she states that Reunion has already lost this battle. They chose wrong, but certain people can still change their path. I'm going to assume that this is going to be directed towards the Phantom Crossbowmen and maybe even the entirety of Reunion. The story will go back in time before Frost Nova and the Doctor were dug out of the debris. The scenes that are shown here are somewhat cool. At least for 1 second, Rhodes Island and the Yeti Squad aren't at each other's throats. Sadly, Frost Nova wins the bet, but she doesn't kill the Doctor, because Amiya and the rest didn't attack the Yeti Squad. Frost Nova hopes that the Yetis and Rhodes Island do not cross paths again, but as cruel as Terra is, the two sides meet at the Lungmen substructure. Unlike the first Frost Nova fight, this one is no better. Gameplay-wise, obviously, it just isn't any better than the first fight. It's even more annoying, even more RNG based than the first one, and there's also the frost mechanic that made me split my skull open for several hours trying to figure out a strat with even a year 5 operator. That's how hard this fight is. Frost Nova is fighting Rhodes Island to test them. Before the fight even begins, there's a lot of exchange between the characters. Amiya is being flooded with all kinds of thoughts and all kinds of emotions coming from Frost Nova's mind. It's Frost Nova's pain, sorrow, and anger. Amiya starts crying, and I see why, since having all of these emotions flood into you isn't the best feeling. Frost Nova says the exact same thing as one of the Yeti Squad members when another member asked, "They're all going to die." And then the scene from the beginning yet again unfolds. If Rhodes Island defeats Frost Nova, it means some will be able to survive. After you witness the scene in full, you really understand what Frost Nova means by her joining Rhodes Island. It isn't physically joining Rhodes Island, rather join them with a part of her soul. At least that's how I personally understand Frost Nova joining Rhodes Island. This isn't a fight that just happens. It's because Frost Nova believes that Rhodes Island can make a difference. And by this encounter, it is supposed to determine whether Rhodes Island really is prepared for Tallulah. It's an interesting motive of hers that doesn't make this fight redundant or forced. This fight feels like it has a purpose. Not just one purpose, but many reasons to happen at the same time. While I didn't cry during Frost Nova's death, I felt something pierce through my heart. This death is really impactful not only to the reader, but also the characters as well. Frost's death was also impactful, but this one feels much more impactful on Amiya and the rest. Here's the thing, instead of Frost Nova's death impacting Amiya the most, it was the Doctor. Unlike Misha, where Amiya had the most time with her and cared the most about her, here with Frost Nova it was the Doctor. Trust me, the Doctor feels so many emotions when they need to carry the sleeping Frost Nova to the Rhodes Island landship. Hatred, sorrow, and regret are the few emotions that the Doctor displays. They don't even try to hide it. The scene where Frost Nova talks with the Doctor for the last time, it stirs something within me. Some unexplainable feeling. There are no words to explain this final interaction between the Doctor and Frost Nova. I can't find any words for it. The aftermath of Frost Nova's death is really going to set the mood for Episode 7 as a whole. Lungmen has been saved, the Reunion forces have been dealt with, those weird black raincoats have also retreated for now. But Chen has not finished. People telling you to not go and investigate somewhere is suspicious enough, so as the superintendent of the LGD, Chen decides to investigate the sewers. Swire tries to stop her from doing so, but in the end, it's all futile. Swire uses multiple arguments in the process. But what's the point when you're talking to somebody as stubborn as Chen? Whatever she sees, oh god, it's nothing good. There's also a scene with Blaze and Greythroat where Blaze asks Greythroat to help her get up, and they both have a discussion on the difference between infected and uninfected. Much doesn't come out of this interaction besides Blaze mentioning that the Doctor is heading over to the Rhodes Island crematorium, and Amiya is heading over towards Lungmen's executive office to talk with Wei Yenwu. Speaking of Amiya, she is currently in the Chief's executive office where she meets the Red Robes that try to warn her that Rhodes Island shouldn't stay too long in Lungmen. But Amiya just responds that this world isn't picky about who it eats. Amiya has come to Mr. Wei for one reason, and that's canceling the contract with Lungmen. I'm not exactly surprised by her decision when you realize how much of an asshole Wei Yanwu was this entire time. Amiya states that a partnership with Lungmen is not a good fit for Rhodes Island. Wei questions whether Lungmen owes something to the infected side of Rhodes Island, but Amiya responds that Rhodes Island has no infected side. The organization doesn't fight for only the infected, but every single person in the world. With the termination of the contract between Rhodes Island and Lungmen, Rhodes Island will leave Lungmen and cease any further support. Wei starts getting desperate, offering Amiya to give Rhodes Island Lungmen's bounty, which Amiya declines again, saying that the only thing that everybody at Rhodes Island cares about is how their partners do business. One of the other reasons why Amiya is also terminating this contract is because not only Rhodes Island is being left in the dark, the LGD, the normal folk of Lungmen, and all those infected in the slums have no idea what shady business their political leader is involving themselves in. Wei asks if Amiya can read minds, but she responds that it's up to his speculation whether she can read minds or not. Amiya is not done yet. She mentions that whether somebody is a Rhodes Island operator, a member of the Reunion, an exile of Chernobog, which I'm going to assume is referring to Misha, they are all living people. Their lives shouldn't be dictated by secret schemes. Wei tries to shove his fucked up ideals that it doesn't matter whether a person knows they are playing a role or not. All that matters is that they're playing that role. Amiya refuses to eat any of Wei's bullshit, but enough of trying to argue who is right or wrong, because Chen barges into Wei's office and she is goddamn pissed. Chen questions Wei Yanwu if it was him who ordered to do what he did. The political leader tries to act dumb, asking for a convincing explanation. Chen asks Wei whether he killed Tallulah's father, to which Wei responds with shock, trying to silence Chen by calling his guards, but Chen continues by mentioning that all of this information was passed on to her by Tallulah. The messed up part is that Wei forced Tallulah's mother to marry some cowardly man. You know what Wei says to all of this that Chen is saying? He tries to say that Chen is tired. Dude just gave up the entire argument. Oh my fucking god. After Chen and Wei have an argument, Kaltzik comes in. She has some kind of message to share. Wei says that he doesn't remember letting Dr. Kaltzik enter the parlor, but in Kaltzit's defense comes from Mizuki. Tallulah was never in Lungmen. She was always in Chernobog. She watched every step that Rhodes Island took while being in Chernobog. So I guess that Jessica was right back in episode 4 when mentioning that there's some weird smell of something burning in the air. That was Tallulah the entire time. That silhouette that Chen was chasing after, that was also Tallulah. The worst news that the cast of characters gets to hear from Kaltzit's explanation is that 36 hours from now, the Chernobog city is on course to collide with Lungmen. Oh boy, that isn't good. The core city is already sending out a bunch of urban identification codes, claiming that the city belongs to Ursus. Things in Lungmen are far from over. I wonder what will Wei Yanwu do to prevent this when Amiya has already terminated the contract with Lungmen. That's going to have to wait until I cover episode 7. Well, that's the end of it. You watched the entire thing. I should applaud your attention span. Maybe you watched this in one sitting, maybe you watched it after multiple attempts, but you're here, and I'm thankful for it. I've come a long way from making 5-minute videos to this monstrosity of a video. It's truly surprising, isn't it? Although the quality may vary, this was still a fun video to work on. But enough of me talking. I've got people on here that I want to give credit where it's due. It would definitely not be possible without them, so give some applause to the people on screen right now. Oh yeah, I should probably also do a self-plug over here and tell you to subscribe if you enjoyed the video, right? You can also comment something, but remember, no spoilers. Now, as this is my final video of 2025, I would like to thank you for everything. The support has been crazy over the past few videos and streams that I've done. People genuinely seem to hop on my streams to chill out and have fun, so I'm thankful for that. So, dear viewer, let's say goodbye to 2025 and welcome 2026 with open arms. This was your host, Virus Detected, now clocking off. Peace!